Hey, what's going on, Functional Bodybuilding Nation? Marcus Filly here. I want to talk today about the box squat. The box squat is something that's showing up in the current cycle of Persist, and I want to talk about setup. I want to talk about a few movement cues, and then generally, why do we even use the box squat? So that might be a great place to start. So let me begin by saying the box squat, as I see it, is another approach to muscle contractions that we use inside of Persist. On a day where we're going to squat, some days we might extend the range of motion, some days we might want to abbreviate the range of motion, and when we do that, what we're actually doing is we're taking the muscle bellies, in this case the lower extremity, the legs, and we're putting them at different ranges of motion. At the end range of motion, which might be a little bit weaker and require a different type of stimulus onto our bodies, or if we do an abbreviated range of motion, which we'll show with the box squat, we're putting our muscles at mid-range when they're at peak tension, and it's training the body in a slightly different way. We're always aiming for tools and training methods inside of Persist that really help you to train for the long haul. If you're training for the long haul, then what we want to do is we want to keep doing the same things like squatting, but make subtle changes to the variables within that squat so that you're constantly adapting to a new stimulus and you're not getting overwhelmed with doing the same thing over and over and over again each week. So the box squat is perfect for that. Let me just show you as I sit down what I mean by that. A full range of motion squat, I would go down, my hips would get as low as I can while I maintain a neutral posture in my spine. And here, my hips, my quadriceps, adductors, my glutes, we're at end range of motion. So that when I contract up, I'm contracting out of that bottom position. In a box squat, and this might be the height, I'll talk about height and box selection, but at this height, you can see I'm nowhere near end range of motion for my hips, my quadriceps, my glutes. I'm at kind of a mid-range, and this might be a stronger position for you. So by interrupting the squat depth with a box and having this tactile cue, I am now at a height that might get me to be a little bit stronger in my bottom position. So that's just, again, another way of training. If I train this way all the time, I might lose end range of motion. If I train end range of motion all the time, I might start to see myself plateau and need some variables, and this provides me a great way to build some top end strength, maybe work some heavier loads for a cycle of 6 weeks. The other thing that the box squat does is that this disrupts the eccentric or the lowering phase with the concentric. As I prescribe it often in Persist, and you'll see this done in a lot of different training methods and styles out there, a box squat is performed with a slight pause on the box. So I sit down and up. That slight pause is a disruption between that eccentric and concentric, where normally if I were to just squat down, I get this stretch reflex, boom, stretch, boom, stretch, and that makes it easier for me to return out of the bottom. Whereas here, I sit down, pause, and I have to come up from a dead stop. I mean, I have to generate all that force out of nothing, which is another way to vary the contraction types inside of your training. And if you do this for 6 to 12 weeks and then return back to squatting with a down and up or a bounce out of the bottom, you might see that you're stronger in these sticking positions that a lot of people have, or that you can now lift more. Okay, that's a little bit about why we would use the box squat. Now, how do I set up for a box squat? Well, a lot of people have these boxes at their gym, okay? 20 inches, 24 inches, 30 inches. It doesn't provide you a lot of options for height. It just so happens that the 20 inch, the lowest, is more or less correct for my body height, shape, my limb lengths. I really would like most of you to aim for 90 degrees at the knee and 90 degrees at the hip when you're on your box for squatting. This actually places me a little bit too high. So the standard box that is in most gyms, the 20 inch, 24 inch, 30 inch adjustable box, doesn't even work for me if I want to be optimal about it. Now, if I squat to this 20 inch, it's not the end of the world. I'm still going to get the idea and the stimulus that I want out of this, but if you have the option to get something a little bit more precise, then for me, that looks like a standard bench. If I sit on this standard bench, particularly if I'm loaded in the back rack, you're gonna see that I am more or less at 90 degrees and 90 degrees, which is what I'm gonna aim for. So I opt for the bench when I'm squatting. And then the other thing you can do is you can even get a lower box and you can build it up with plates. I suggest using heavier plates like 25, 35, or 45-pound plates that aren't gonna slide around on you. But let's say I was between these two heights and I wanted to put a thin 10-pound plate on, you could do that as well. So that's how you're gonna set up for our box height. And then when you're setting up for your actual box squat, you wanna give yourself just enough room, but I do not want you to have to step way, way back for this. All right, if I come underneath this bar, come out of the rack, it's a gentle step backwards and I'm in position for my box squat. A couple movement cues that we're going to think about. One of the advantages of having a box to squat to is that we can squat with our weight shifted towards the back a lot more pronounced than if we were just squatting in open space. If I squat in open space and I really squat backwards, I start to lose my balance and I would fall backwards. So reaching my hips back as I squat to a box, what it allows me to do is load up my posterior chain a bit more. Hamstrings get a little bit more loading, glutes, hips, and that's advantageous if we want to bias this part of the body to build up maybe some stronger positions here. Again, also when we're thinking about persist programming and functional bodybuilding programming, oftentimes it's just a matter of getting you some variation in your training and getting you out of doing the same thing for months and months and months on end. If you've always been doing a traditional back squat for 6 to 12 months and you're not seeing progress, then perhaps it's time to take those training principles and apply it to a new movement like the box squat, where I can emphasize posterior chain a bit more. The other thing you can look at is when I'm at the bottom of my box squat, my shins are more or less vertical. And that's what I want you to try and achieve. The only way you can achieve vertical shins is by reaching the hips backwards as you squat down. And to get there, I might be doing a more pronounced lean to my torso, but that's totally fine in this position and in this movement. So I'll show you a few reps with my bar loaded on my back. I take a hip width stance, or sorry, a shoulder width stance, maybe slightly wider. That again is also gonna help me get back into that squat position. Reach back, pause, and up. So as a review of points of performance, I'm reaching back, letting my torso drop, pausing on the box, shins vertical, and then as I come up, I'm trying to come up quickly off the box, which is demonstrated or at least shown in the tempo of the box squat, which is often an X speed on the concentric. So I'll go down slowly, under control, pause, up, and repeat. Okay, I hope these tips on the box squat help. Now you understand why we do it, how to set up for it, and a few movement cues that are gonna get you squatting heavier, safer, and stronger. Thanks.